Okay, so up next we have Lynn Weaver. Lynn is a registered dietitian and professional home economist with over 25 years of experience in food and nutrition promotion and communications. Her approach to healthy eating is both sensible and practical, with bites of the latest and most relevant nutrition research. In her role as market development manager for Canola, Lynn has helped to develop strategies, creatives, and media campaigns to promote the use of canola oil in Canada. Lynn also co-leads the Canola Eat Well team, supporting 43,000 canola farmers in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. She is a passionate advocate for Canadian agriculture and believes in the importance of bridging the gap between the public's understanding of where nutritious food comes from, how it is produced, and how it gets onto family tables.
Thank you.
There you are.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. So we're going to switch it up from plant nutrition to human nutrition. On your tables, you may have seen some resources that we have. So there is this amazing little fatty acid chart, and I'm going to be walking you through this later on. And then this is our award-winning cookbook. We actually produce a little cookbook yearly, and every year we win an award. So we must be doing something right. And this crazy thing, does anyone know what it is? This, I know how much you, oh yay. What is it? It is, it's a Swedish washcloth. I know how much you guys love to do dishes. So you are going to be so happy when you go home tonight and wash dishes, but actually they're really good. It's biodegradable, and it lasts for about 3 months, and we just wanted to give you something so you wouldn't forget about us. So you heard my bio. I grew up in Alberta, surrounded by canola, even in the 1980s. Well, I guess that's when we really started growing it. I ended up moving to Ontario for university and then attending Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan University. But I've been around canola for a long time. But what I wanted to talk to you today about is about fat. So for many, many years, fat was a bad thing in our diet. We didn't want to, health experts were telling us to eat less fat, and there was strong media campaigns on eating less fat in our diet. And now we know that that's not true. We know that it's important to eat the right kind of fat, and canola is one of those right kinds of fat. I'm also going to talk to you about the specific health benefits about canola oil. We'll take a look at that fatty acid profile and look at all of the amazing culinary uses that canola oil allows you. We'll look at some trends and then hopefully have some time for questions. So I'm going to do a little bit of a Fat 101 just in case you can't remember your biology. But fat is an essential nutrient along with protein and carbohydrates, and it's really important for brain development and function. So our brains are actually 60% fat. It's a structural component of cells, and it helps insulates us, keeps us warm, and surrounds our organs for protection. It helps us absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K. So who this morning took their vitamin D? Everybody, yay. So vitamin D is really important. My public health message as a dietitian, it's really important this time of the year to be getting vitamin D because we're not getting those rays. But did you know that if you take that vitamin D with a mixed meal containing fat, you're going to increase your absorption by 32%? Guess what? Vitamins A, E, and K, if you saute those delicious green vegetables in a little bit of canola oil, you're also going to increase that absorption of those vitamins because there's fat-soluble vitamins, meaning they need fat to be absorbed. Same thing with a delicious salad. So drizzle your salad with a little bit of canola oil and you're going to absorb more of those nutrients. So fat is an important part of our diet. Some fats, like canola oil, keep our hearts healthy and our blood vessels healthy as well. But it is a concentrated source of energy, and it contains 20 or twice as many calories per gram compared to that of carbohydrates and protein. We store fat as energy to use later, and our muscles also use fat as an energy source during light activity and rest. So we want to eat fat in our diet, but we, like with everything else, we just don't want to eat too much of it. There are different types of fats. So there are saturated fat and unsaturated fats, and then I'll talk a little bit about trans fat. But fats are triglycerides made of a combination of glycerol and fatty acids. And depending on their structure, fats are classified as either saturated or unsaturated fat. And this all has to do with the double bonds. Saturated fat, the carbon atoms are saturated with hydrogen molecules, so there's no double bonds. So that carbon chain is saturated, and that means that saturated fats are typically solid at room temperature. So the examples of saturated fat would be fatty meat, and you can see the white fat on steaks and pork chops and chicken. It's also found in full-fat dairy, butter, cheese, and yogurt, and some plant-based fats such as coconut or palm oil. Saturated fat can raise bad LDL cholesterol, and we know that that's a risk factor for heart disease and stroke. Highly processed foods are also a major source of saturated fat, and those would include hot dogs and processed burgers, deli meats, grocery store cookies, donuts, cakes, chips, French fries, and snack foods. And surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, or maybe disappointingly, Canadians consume too much saturated fat, and almost twice as much as we should be eating. And the number one cause of death in Canada is heart disease for both men and women. So this is something that we do need to pay attention to. Trans fats are really interesting. There's two different types of trans fat. There's naturally occurring trans fat, and that's what you'll find in milk or dairy products. And there's something to do with the ruminant animal. When it produces the milk, it contains that trans fat. But we don't think that that trans fat is actually bad for us because it's naturally occurring. The trans fat that we really absolutely need to avoid would be the trans fat that is produced from healthy oil, for example, even like canola, and then they put intense pressure and intense heat, and we turn that healthy oil into a solid fat. And we know that trans fats actually increase our risk of heart disease. And in 2017, we actually banned trans fats for use in Canada. In the United States, New York was the first state to ban trans fat, and actually, I think after 12 years, they've seen a reduction in heart disease by banning these trans fats. There's no benefit to trans fats, so we're not missing anything in our diet by removing that. But you really do need to check nutrition labels. So even though trans fats are banned, sometimes they still show up. So this is actually a cookie that I bought last summer. I should have known by the price. It was $2.50. So what can you buy for $2.50 these days? And you can see that there's the trans fat there. So it's 1.5 grams. So sometimes stores, particularly grocery stores that have their own bakery, can use products containing trans fat, and they're kind of getting away with that. They're kind of going under the radar of what the regulations are. Also keep in mind that if an item has 0.5 grams of trans fat or less, it doesn't have to be declared on the label. So what you want to do when you're buying packaged foods is you want to look for a partially hydrogenated oil and stay away from that. Now, unsaturated fats include mono and polyunsaturated fats, and they're liquid at room temperature, and they improve blood cholesterol levels and can help ease inflammation. Unsaturated fats are predominantly found in plant foods such as vegetable oils like canola, nuts, seeds, as well as fatty fish. Monounsaturated fats only have one double bonded atom, and they're typically liquid at room temperature and can turn solid when chilled. So I don't know if you've ever made salad dressing with olive oil before or made a marinade with olive oil, but if you did, because it's higher in saturated fat, it can turn solid at room temperature, and you can have kind of a sludgy marinade or a gloppy salad dressing. Monounsaturated fats have been shown to improve blood cholesterol levels and also contribute to vitamin E in the diet, which is an antioxidant. So some examples are olive oil, canola, peanut, non-hydrogenated margarine, avocados, nuts, including almonds, pistachios, cashews, pecans, and hazelnuts. Polyunsaturated fats have more than one double bonded carbon atom, so they make them floppy and really, really loose. They're typically liquid again at room temperature and can turn solid when chilled. Polyunsaturated fats include essential fats. That means that our body can't make them and we must get them from food. And these specifically are the omega-3 and the omega-6 fats. So omega-3 fat is really important in our diet. They're a plant-based, so the alpha-linolenic or the ALA, and there's actually recommendations on how much we should be eating a day. So it's anywhere from 1.1 to 1.6 grams of ALA per day that we're getting. Now, what does that mean? Well, flaxseed is really high in omega-3, and if you take a look at the little chart, you can see it's a nice source of omega-3, so we absolutely all should be including more flax into our diet. 1 teaspoon is 2.46 grams, but canola, which has no flavor, which can be used in multiple applications, has 0.42 grams of ALA per day. Walnuts are also a good source. A quarter of a cup is 0.85 grams, and margarine made with canola oil can also contribute to that. The other type of omega-3 is DHA and EPA, and those are mostly found in fish, and they can also help reduce the risk of stroke, help with eye, nerve, and membrane development, and can also reduce the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. And there's lots of ongoing research, possibly linking omega-3s with lowering cancer risk, dementia, Alzheimer's, and dementia. Canada's Food Guide recommends at least eating 2 fish servings per week. 1 serving is about 2.5 ounces of fish, so that's actually not a lot. And the fattier the fish, the higher in omega-3 it's going to be. So things like anchovies, not really a fan myself, herring, also kind of fishy, mackerel, also kind of fishy, but salmon, trout would also be good sources of that omega-3 fat. And you can also find omega-3 in fortified foods such as eggs, juice, and dairy products. And honestly, for the price of eggs now, spending that little bit extra to get that omega-3 probably isn't a bad idea, because we do need to make sure we are getting that omega-3 into our diet. It's important. Omega-6 fat are plant-based and found in canola, safflower, sunflower, and corn oils, as well as nuts and seeds. In contrast to omega-3, which help prevent clotting, they can also reduce risk of stroke and also help lower heart disease. It's unknown right now what the ideal ratio is between omega-3 and omega-6. There hasn't been any determined amounts yet, but that is something that if you check on social media, that sometimes there can be a concern. But you'll see with canola oil, it actually has a very good ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fat. So what are the positions within the health experts? Health Canada recommends that foods containing mostly unsaturated fat should replace foods that contain mostly saturated fat. And this is to promote cardiovascular health. The dietary reference intake for fat is about 20 to 35% of our total intake for energy. The omega-3s, the 0.6 and the 1.2% of energy, and the omega-6, 5 to 10% of energy. Saturated trans fats and cholesterol should be kept as low as possible when consuming a nutritionally adequate diet. In the United States, they have guidelines that are even more robust than ours, and they actually ask for a reduction in saturated fat to about 7 to 8% of our total intake. Again, shifting our diet from saturated fat to polyunsaturated or unsaturated fats. And, of course, eliminating industrial produced trans fats. So I've spoken about canola oil, but what does make it so special? Well, we grow it we developed in Saskatchewan. It was developed by 2 researchers in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We grow it here, and we ship over 90% across the world to consumers that are absolutely empowered to be able to want to use canola oil in their diet. But canola oil is affordable, and it's extremely versatile. So we can use it for baking, sautéing, high heat cooking, deep fat frying, salad dressings, and marinades. It doesn't have a flavor, so you can use it in many, many applications without having that, without having a flavor. And of course, grown in Canada. So from a nutrition point of view, it is extremely low in saturated fat. So 7% of the total intake is saturated fat. It is a source of omega-6. It's high in plant-based omega-3 and rich in monounsaturated fat. And it has that really nice ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fat. It also contains vitamin E, an antioxidant, and vitamin K, which plays a role in blood clotting. And it's trans fat-free. So this is a chart that I love. And when I worked as a traditional dietitian, and we had questions about fat, because fat has been something that's been on everyone's radar for a long time, showing this chart just answered everyone's questions. So the red bar is the saturated fat, and you can see that canola oil is lowest in saturated fat. And for people that were buying coconut oil, you can see that coconut oil is one of the highest oils that are highest in saturated fat. And even compared to olive oil, canola oil has half the amount of saturated fat than olive oil does, and it also contains more omega-3 fat. Flax is a bit of a superstar because it's low in saturated fat and contains a nice amount of omega-3 fat, but we can't use flax for everything, right? So I do encourage you to eat that tablespoon a day of ground up flax. It's good for you, but you can't use the oil in the same application that you can for canola oil. So from a culinary perspective, canola oil is also ideal, and this is why restaurants, food service institutions, and home cooks use it. It acts as a heat transfer when frying. It creates crisp textures, intense flavors and browning, moistens and tenderizes food, aids in leavening, creates emulsions, and gives food the mouthful that we all enjoy. Canola oil is great to use in baking as it's light and clear and has a mild flavor. It blends easy with other ingredients to produce a moist and soft texture. When you replace some traditional solid fat with canola oil, you're going to reduce the trans and saturated fat and making it a little bit of a healthier baked product. So butter definitely has a delicious taste to it. There's no question about that. But butter can also be expensive, and you can actually reduce the amount of butter that you're cooking and replace that with canola oil. So when I'm baking something like a cookie, I'll do half butter and half canola oil because of the price and also because of the change in the health profile. It still tastes good. Canola oil also has a really high smoke point. Smoke point refers to the temperature when fat starts to break down from both a flavor and nutritional standpoint. And canola has a high smoke point at 648 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it ideal for high heat cooking. Restaurants like to use canola oil because they can make their deep fryers last even up to a day longer, so that's going to save them money. In the United States, we actually have a health claim with canola oil, and in October of 2006, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration authorized a health claim based on its content of unsaturated fats. And the claim states that it's limited but not conclusive scientific evidence suggests that eating about 1.5 tablespoons of canola daily may reduce the risk of coronary heart disease due to the unsaturated fat content of the canola oil. Of course, to achieve this benefit, you need to replace the canola oil with the similar amount of saturated fat. You can't just add canola oil onto your diet. You need to take something else away to get that health benefit. And if you're looking for more health research, we have lots of human health research. And the Canola Council of Canada has a database. So you can go to that database and see loads and loads and loads of research based on human health. So now market trends. Does anyone know in Canada what is the #1 oil used? Pardon me? #1 oil used in Canada? Olive? Safflower? It's canola. The number one oil used in Canada, it was a trick question, is canola. So canola sells vegetable and olive oil. Coconut oil, which was the darling a couple of years ago, never really achieved very much and actually is in decrease in sales. But canola oil is the number one oil that we use in Canada and even Japan. Now, provincially, in the West, we have strong canola sales, and this is Nielsen retail data, and we take a look at this data every couple of years just to see what is actually happening on the grocery store level. And we can see that in the West, canola oil is high, and that's actually what's making canola oil the number one oil used in Canada. Unfortunately, in Ontario and Quebec, or maybe not unfortunately, but it's a huge opportunity for us to move those numbers and help promote the use of canola oil and take over some of that market share. So that's really what our goal is in terms of market development, is getting those Ontario and Quebec users to switch from vegetable or olive oil to canola oil. Does anyone here know what vegetable oil is? I know you guys have a pretty good understanding of oils, but vegetable oil is not made from vegetables. Unfortunately, but no, it's not made from vegetables. Vegetable oil is kind of what's ever left over in processing, and they'll just bottle it and market it as a vegetable oil. In the West, typically vegetable oil is canola oil, or it could be a blend of canola oil and soy. In Ontario, vegetable oil is typically soybean oil, maybe some canola oil. So so even though canola oil may be used in vegetable oil, we want to make sure that Canadians are buying canola oil instead of vegetable oil for all of the many benefits. So why was coconut oil so popular? It was once deemed like the world's healthiest oil and was marketed to boost brain health, speed weight loss, like you name it. Dr. Oz mentioned it, and so everyone was buying it. And even prevent heart disease, which is quite surprising when you see how high in saturated fat the product is. It may not raise blood cholesterol as much as butter due to the fatty acid profile, but we know that it's just so high in saturated fat. So it's okay to use a little bit of coconut oil if that's something that you like, but remember that we do want to switch from a highly saturated fat diet to a mostly unsaturated fat diet. And like I said, the sales now, the numbers are decreasing anyways. So olive oil is also very popular, and that's due to the Mediterranean diet. And we know that there are health benefits associated with the Mediterranean diet. But I think that the oil that they're using, or the studies are not really, they're not really comparing apples to apples. They might be comparing, or they may be comparing apples to apples, but we're really looking at apples to oranges, because we're not buying the same olive oil that big jug at Costco for $20 for a gallon or a liter. It's actually 3 liters of olive oil for $18. And that's just regular, highly processed olive oil. That's not the extra virgin olive oil. So when we're looking at the Mediterranean diet, we really, I think, need to deep down deeper, to really see what some of those health benefits are. But there are other diets, like the Nordic diet, that actually uses canola oil instead of olive oil because it's in a Nordic country and they can't grow olive oil there. So that's something that hopefully I'll be able to share some more information with you at another time. So key takeaways: fat is an important part of a healthy diet, so the right kind of fat. Foods that contain mostly unsaturated fat should replace foods that contain mostly saturated fat. So I'm not saying no to meat, but we probably want to choose leaner cuts of meats and eat some of those other amazing products that we grow in Saskatchewan, like beans, peas, and lentils, more often. You want to avoid trans fat as much as possible, which is getting easier to do. You want to eat more omega-3 fat and probably have fish twice a week. And canola oil is an ideal choice for your pantry because it's affordable and it's so versatile. It has so many uses. It's not like, it doesn't have just one specific use in mind. You can do many, many things with canola oil. And it has the largest market share in Canada. So my job as market development manager is really looking at sharing the amazing story about canola to other Canadians. And what we did a couple of years ago, there were 3 provincial groups, so Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and we realized we were all doing little bits of market development. Alberta was focusing on education, Saskatchewan was focusing on health, and Manitoba was focusing more on influencer marketing. And we decided to actually band together because we knew if we combined our resources, we would be able to do much more by doing that. So we have combined the groups. This is my team, so I work with Jen Dick in Manitoba. Tara is off on mat leave right now. We have some help with website, admin, and communications. But our challenge really is to, how do we move a country that, we know canola oil is the #1 oil sold in Canada. How do we move everyone from being apathetic to using canola oil to absolutely loving canola oil and talking about canola oil? Maybe like the Italians do with olive oil, right? They love to talk about it. So canola is one of, we invented it here, we grow it here, and we sell it all over the world. We want canola oil to be as iconic as maple syrup, Molson Canadian, ketchup chips, things that people know about Canada. Canola, it was made up of the words canola and oil. I know you guys know that, but many other Canadians don't. And we want to, now is the time to really let other Canadians know this kind of pride that we are so proud of doing. So we've partnered with a firm this year and a PR agency, so the 3 provinces can do even bigger things. And we will have a marketing program developed by May, and it is just going to be absolutely fantastic. We're working really, really hard to make sure that we've got all of our nuts and bolts in place, and it is going to be a strategy that we're going to be keeping for the next 3 to 5 years. So that's it. Any questions about nutrition? Any questions about canola marketing? And you can always talk. Yes? At this time, there has been no set ratio. Canola oil is 1 to 2, so that's pretty good. But right now, there has been no defined actual ideal ratio. Yeah. All right, well, I will let our next speaker, my fabulous colleague.